Thank you for auditing the always positive new music review show hosted by a French professor who every Thursday tries to feature something a little bit more thunderground. Today I'm going to be reviewing the album Heterosexuality by Shamir. And part of the reason why I did this is, the last album I reviewed was Slut Pop by Kim Petras, and there's a lot of themes of sexuality and gender and that, so I'm sort of keeping up this theme this week. I don't know, is it because it's Valentine's Day and it's as good of a time as any to question these these ideas of sexuality and gender? No, that's not why. Just because. And so, before I even get into this album, the title of it is so strong. Just the word heterosexuality. And the cover has this man or this person with naked from the torso up, wearing some kind of horns, and it's very clear, just right off the bat, that what we're supposed to do is question this term. Somebody who's presenting in a non-traditional way, using a word which we associate with traditional sexuality, with what people have called, erroneously for many years, normal sexuality. I was talking about this with a friend of mine and a friend of the show, Stella, and she sent me this article about the history of the word heterosexual. It's written by Jonathan Katz. It's called The Invention of Heterosexuality, and it's quite interesting. It points out that heterosexuality is actually 130 years old. That's it. That's how long the term has existed. We assume that it's a concept, it's a norm that we have had, and it's a part of our political institutions forever. That's not true. It's really only been around since the late 19th and 20th centuries. The first person to use the term was James Kiernan in 1892, the first American. And when he talked about heterosexuality, he referred to it as psychical hermaphrodism, inclination towards both sexes, that use abnormal methods of gratification. So this term, which feels like it is forever, is actually, not only is it new, but when it was first used, it was applied to what we now call bisexuality. In Germany at the same time, they were also developing these theories, but we're moving more towards where we are now of creating categories. There's the homo and there's the hetero. What I find really interesting about this article is finally it goes into the work of Kinsey, the great revolutionary person who observed human sexuality. And I think it's his words about heterosexuality, about sexuality in general, that best fit this album. Because anytime you say heterosexual, what appears in your mind is the binary. You think of homosexual. The same way if I say dogs, you think cats. If I say black, you think white. This is what Kinsey said about human sexuality. The world is not to be divided into sheep and goats. Only the human mind invents categories and tries to force facts into separate pigeonholes. The living world is a continuum. So if that interests you, if the idea of the living world being a continuum interests you, then I think you will find this album to be quite interesting. A lot of it feels as though it's somebody who is really struggling with these categories that have been foisted upon him, that are foisted upon us all. I feel comfortable in my category, but that's only because my category has been prioritized for most of human existence. But were I not to be comfortable with it, this might be the album for me. Even just reading the album titles make it clear. It's like a story. Just the album titles. Gay agenda, cisgender, abomination, stability, caught up, father, cold brew, marriage, reproductive, nuclear. All of these themes are on normalcy, like marriage and nuclear, implying nuclear family, stability and father, and then reproductive. Along with that, these first three songs with abomination and gay agenda, the whole thing has a very deliberate meditation on not feeling like you fit into these categories and what does that mean. Musically, it has basically two different modes. One which I like quite a bit, the other which I don't. Well, I like okay. He's a very talented musician. Now, I use he. He identifies as non-binary, but in his interviews, he says that he hates being referred to as they. So, who am I to go against what Shamir wishes? He plays bass, guitar, and sings. He co-writes, along with a producer, Hollow Comet. And musically, it varies between a sort of tough, industrial, kind of aggravating style, which I prefer, and then basically soft rock. Almost like 80s soft rock. At the heart of everything, though, is this very hard-to-place voice. He has a voice which is very non-binary. It's able to go between what we consider to be traditionally masculine registers and traditionally female registers. His style, his approach, he has just this way of singing which defies categorization, along with the lyrics, along with the themes of the songs. It's really just a smash the box of categorization album. Speaking of smashing, have you smashed the like bucket yet? I did research. I read like a 25-page article on heterosexuality. That deserves a like bucket. And my hair is not cooperating. It's doing this thing where it gets in my face, which I always think looks cute, but my wife says it makes me look like a greasy boy. You can tell me in the comments, is it cute or am I a greasy boy? I really regret asking you to tell me. Okay. See, I'm like legitimately blushing. This isn't. You can't fake blushing. It's one of those things. Actually, I worked with someone in grad school. She was my professor. She wrote an entire book about blushing in 18th century literature, because you can't hide blushing. I'm turning as red as Chuck Berry's. So don't tell me if I'm a greasy boy. Musically, I would say that the person who Shamir reminds me most of, and this might seem a little bit odd, seeing as Shamir is African American from Las Vegas, but it's actually Morrissey, who is in Las Vegas now anyway. But the way that Morrissey, in a similar way, constantly fights against boundaries. Everyone wants to put him into, okay, you're gay, or you're this, or you're that, and he always fights against any kind of boundary. He refuses to represent any group. But mainly the beautiful, soaring quality of his voice, a kind of winking depression and sadness. And I think that's heard best in my stamp for the album, my favorite track on the album, Cisgender, which I'll include a link to up there. Musically, it's got this languid guitar with a feedback to start, almost like a cinematic 80s drum behind, doom, 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 ka. Just bendy guitars and nice keyboards. When the verse comes in, it's just like a keyboard with some little drums in the back, and just his voice is just all over the place. Cannot be contained, and the lyrics are about not being contained. You want to see me, but you just can't get past how I look, or how I talk, or I think, or how I walk. It's so effing sad. And then the way he delivers this chorus, I swear to God, this is such a Morrissey chorus. I'm not cisgender, I'm not binary trans. I don't want to be a girl, I don't want to be a man. It has that sort of maudlin directness. But it's an interesting concept that he's explaining all the things that he is not. I am just existing in this God-forsaken land. And that's sort of the existential problem that we're all in, right? No matter how many categories we're in, and we all like to categorize ourselves, we like to say what kind of person we are, what kind of things we like, put ourselves in little boxes, we're just existing in this God-forsaken land. And you can take it or leave it, or you can just stay back, stay back. Later, he says, I'm never going to pass for you, you just got to get past. So it's interesting because he's talking about not passing as someone who is non-binary. I've never heard that term and that expression. I suppose there's more for me to learn, because I was under the impression that part of the non-binary, identifying as non-binary, is that you're not trying to pass. You can't really be trying to pass for something because you are explicitly not one thing that you would pass for. But I don't know. I don't even know if that even made sense as a sentence. But the song just ends so beautifully with his voice just so high and so good. I mean, I know it sounds goofy, but I think if he did an entire album with Morrissey, it would just be a perfect album. It'd just be really good. Anyway, Let's go through the rest of the album a little bit quicker. It starts off with the song Gay Agenda, which was really promising. I sort of wish the whole album was in this mode, these blown out drums, machine-like and aggravating before the soft vocals come in, they're nice and mournful. You're just stuck in the box that was made for me, and you're mad I got out and I'm living free. Free your mind, come outside, pledge allegiance to the gay agenda. A lot of his lyrics are like that. They're very on the nose, they're very direct. But the second verse is a little bit lighter, a little bit more interesting, and then the outro is nice with this kind of playing around with sounds, and it's a little bit catchier. Cisgender is track 2, already discussed, and then Abomination, which has very industrial drums, kind of reminds me sort of like 90s era political rap. So he's not good. He's not a good rapper, and I don't think he's trying to be a good rapper. He really does remind me, like, there was a period in the 90s, like when Prince was messing around with rap, or Madonna, or like sort of like a lot of the stars they weren't like trying to co-opt the art form. They were just like dipping their toes in the water, sort of like, what if I tried speaking in rhyme? So I don't know. It's interesting. I listened to a little bit of his earlier work, and his earlier work was a lot like this. So it seems to me that he's sort of evolved past this, because this bit is cute, but it isn't quite as moving. I'm just a F word who lives like a maggot because I'm always with the S word. I'll keep my foot on your neck and don't you forget, can't trust the government to change-ish. Kind of goofy political raps. Beat you hoes to death like your name is Rasputin. Like those kinds of extended, overly thought out similes. It's not great, but it's cute. Next song is called Stability, which is basically just like an 80s soft rock song. Reminds me a little bit of I've Had the Time of My Life from Dirty Dancing, which, if I have to be honest, is a good song, but I've never said that to anybody. That song has tortured me since 1986, but realistically, if I sit back and think about it, the chorus is quite strong. But it's very cool. What's nice about this, listening to it a couple of times, just like he does a lot of cool complexity in the second verse with the drums, like where they'll have a simple drum beat, and then the second time it goes through, it gets a little bit more complex. Very just sort of on the nose lyrics again. I know you really want me, but I don't want to have to pretend that I don't have reservations because of past events. There's a certain like quality of his lyricism which is almost anti-poetic. At times he gets poetic, but here it's just like he's writing a letter. I don't want to have to pretend that I don't have reservation because of past events. It really is, he's singing like he's speaking. But there's an earnestness in that, and there's an earnestness throughout the album, and that's one of his great virtues, is there's like no irony on this album at all. There's like no distance. He's just sort of saying, this is who I am, and who I am is someone that a lot of people can't understand, and you probably don't understand it, but here I am. A nice bass line outro, which I believe is him playing the bass, which is great. Caught Up is a super sweet pop song, kind of another straightforward pop rock, kind of warm synthesizers, nice high singing in the pre-chorus, oddly violent lyrics here. And here's where, like, sometimes he's never ironic, but he does have the capacity for fairly obscure lyrics. I couldn't wait till I'd be killed, the leaking fault I could not feel. So cut me down, I don't want to be this high, I know your head is shedding and the guilt is killing you. Just sort of weird, dark, kind of angry lyrics. But there is a feeling underneath all this longing to be accepted and understood. Along with that is a certain anger. He's sort of, speaking of Morrissey, sort of the boy with the thorn in his side. Behind the hatred there lies bungling desire for love. We have a little bit of that here. More interesting drum play in the second verse. And then we get to the track Father, which is a real departure. It starts off just guitar and voice, maybe some ocean sounds with synthesizers, and it's a moving song about being abandoned. There's a darkness where you left me, in this hole I made a home. And again, these lyrics feel as though he's just writing without any real sense of meter or even rhyme. It picks up in the second verse. There's like some thumping drum machines, and then he talks about calling his mother, who just tells him about the horoscope, and you really get this feeling of just someone who doesn't have anybody. He can't really depend on his mother, can't really depend on his father, and then he gets gets okay with being lonely, and there's this sound of like astronauts and a spaceship taking off. And we had this really sort of sad conclusion. I'm finally ready to go it alone. But is it happy or is it sad? I can't tell. I can't determine if this is a sad ending of someone who is embracing isolation, or if it's a happy ending of someone who's realizing he doesn't need to depend on the people he couldn't depend on anyway. The next song is called Cold Brew. Back a little bit to the weirdness at the beginning of the album, so that was nice, but then it settles into more soft rock. Very kind of straightforward lyrics. When I'm trying to sleep, my trauma visits me and remind me it's all I've got. And the way that he tries to get around his traumas by cold brew and ginger beer, which are two very good drinks. Ginger beer is criminally underrated. Ginger beer is if you ever drank ginger ale and thought, I wish my throat hurt. That's what ginger beer is. This reminds me a little bit of Panic at the Disco. And maybe that's just because he's from Las Vegas too. I think Brandon Urie is from Las Vegas. But as sort of like the crooner world goes, the kind of Brandon Urie, Morrissey, Shamir, I think we're sort of in this world of enigmatic, ambiguously sexual crooners. Marriage is the next song. It's got kind of a cool drum loop. It's maybe a little bit too upbeat. I think this is my least favorite song on the album. Sort of an empowerment anthem about like being married to yourself. I like the odd instrumental bit at the end. Very, very cool instrumental bit. Like he's singing with a high guitar. It's odd. It's like my least favorite song on the album, but it has the best instrumental break. So that's why you don't skip. You know, whenever I hear a song I don't like, I'm tempted to skip. But I didn't skip it, even though... You know, I even have a ring, 24 Karat Misery. I swear to God, Marcy should just sing this album, Being Married to Yourself. But this instrumental bit is a real chance for him to show off his singing. Reproductive is the least electronic song. It's like acoustic bass, acoustic drums, just very nice. Makes me wish that the rest of the songs that were softer were all played with real instruments. Lyrically, it seems to be about not reproducing. You know, these are some of these themes of... You know, if there is any value to heterosexuality, right, it's that it is the most efficient way to lead to continuing the species. You know, it's not the only way. It's the most efficient way. So the themes are there, but he says, I'll make sure the evil ends here with me if it's the only thing I do. So that just makes me want to ask him to take it easy on himself. He's not evil. There's no such thing as an evil family line that's going to chase you to the ends of the earth. You can break the wheel. Everybody can break the wheel. You just got to go to therapy, maybe. Go to therapy, break the wheel, have all the babies you want. Post-chorus is really nice. Again, the guitar and voice. I really wish there was more of just this guitar and voice. So I'm quarantined in the basement because I still have signs of COVID. So whenever someone flushes the toilet or turns on the water anywhere in the house, it just makes that noise. It's okay. You're still typing in the comments how I'm not a greasy boy. The final track is Nuclear, which is basically a bossa nova song, and I like it. I like this kind of bossa nova thing. It reminds me a little bit of that Billie Eilish album. You know how she has the one song that's bossa nova. I would be fine if every crooner just threw in one bossa nova song every album. I like his lyrics here. This is where he gets maybe the cheekiest on the whole album. You can nuke my heart like a microwave. I might be warm, but it can't be made back to its original state. I'm quite used to being sad and soggy all the time. Great lyrics. Maybe his best vocal work on the album throughout here. Musically, it's quite interesting. The last verse, he just sings super high. He's harmonizing with himself, and it ends with the following lines. Whoa, the things that give us life make us question if we can take it anymore, but we put up anyway. And he sings the word anyway with a banshee's just howl of resolution in the face of desolation. There's a lot of complicated words at the end of a video. Okay. Whew. Well, I got that video done. See, this is why I should edit my videos, because I could take out the greasy boy thing. But I'm not going to. we'll see where this leads. So yeah, I do definitely recommend checking out this album. At the very least, I think in this age that we're in, where algorithms are encouraging us to increasingly categorize ourselves in terms of what gender we are, what sexuality we are, what kind of genres of music we like, what kind of movies we like. The more that we format ourselves and put ourselves into categories, the easier we are to sell to, right? That's the game. So there's this weird sort of ironic thing where a lot of the anti-capitalist forces are coming up from these areas that are trying to be seen and be identified. But ironically, these forces are also really pushing to make sure that they're not pushing to not be put into a box. They are pushing to be put into their box, which of course, that we need all the boxes. We need every gender to have a box, right? There's no question of that. It's not A, B, and that's it. It should be A through triple G, right? But still, it's still categorization. It's still dividing. We're all still with sorting hats saying we're in Hufflepuff or Gryffindor, and then that's going to determine whether or not we get ads for PragerU or whether or not we get ads for NordVPN. So we need people like Shamir saying, F the world, I'm not this, I'm not that. I don't want to be anything. Okay. I think I nailed the ending there. All right. Well, until next time, there's the camera.